This is honestly one of the most chilling and kind of fascinating stories in the entire history of science. It's all about a brilliant mind, a deadly creature, and this final deliberate act of scientific dedication that completely blurred the line between the researcher and his own subject. Yeah, it's the story of a man who chose to document his own death.
And that right there, that's the whole mystery, isn't it? I mean, just imagine for a second. You get bitten by a snake you know is venomous. What's your first instinct? Panic, right? You call for help, you get to a hospital stat. But Karl P. Schmidt, he did something else entirely. He went home, opened his journal, and just calmly started taking notes. The question we have to ask is, why?
So let's set the scene. It's September 25th, 1957. Just an ordinary Wednesday at one of the world's most famous natural history museums, Chicago's Field Museum. A snake shows up from the local zoo and it needs to be identified. You know, a totally routine task for the museum's chief snake expert. But this single moment, this one bite, would kick off a tragic, self-documented 24-hour experiment. All right, so to really understand what happened here, we need to properly meet the two main players in this whole drama. The celebrated scientist and, of course, the snake that would end his life. Karl P. Schmidt wasn't just some amateur who got in over his head. No, this guy was an absolute giant in his field. He was the chief curator of zoology at the Field Museum. I mean, he was one of the most respected herpetologists on the planet. He'd named hundreds of species and grew the museum's collection like crazy. The bottom line is, this man knew snakes. And this was the snake, a juvenile boomslang from Africa. So while Schmidt was examining it, the snake just darted out and bit his thumb. But here's the crucial part. In 1957, the scientific community kind of just dismissed the boomslang. They were thought to be basically harmless to people, especially a young one. And this difference in understanding, well, it explains his fatal lack of concern. See, back then, boomslangs were known as rear-fanged snakes, and the thinking was that they'd have to literally chew on you for a while to get any significant amount of venom in. We now know that is 100% wrong. Their fangs can deliver a deadly dose in an instant, and their venom, it's one of the most powerful hemotoxins in the world. But in 1957, Schmidt just didn't know that. So instead of racing to a hospital, Schmidt went home, took out his journal, and with this detached scientific precision, he began to chronicle his own body's destruction. The newspapers would later call it his death diary. This timeline is just chilling to look at. You can literally see the venom taking hold from that first fever to the terrifying signs of internal bleeding. But the part that's so strange, so haunting, are those little moments of normalcy tucked in between. Eating toast, having a full breakfast. It's that calm, almost mundane routine in the face of this horrifying reality that makes his diary so unbelievable. So this is one of his first entries. He's on a commuter train, feeling these waves of nausea, and yet his tone is completely matter-of-fact. It's like he's not the patient. He's the observer, documenting symptoms as if it were all happening to somebody else. It's just an incredible display of scientific composure. And this entry, wow. It just shows you the truly deceptive nature of this venom. He describes these incredibly violent physical symptoms, but then he ends it by saying he felt much better and just went back to sleep. He must have thought the worst was over, having no idea of the catastrophic damage that was happening inside his body. Not excessively. Can you believe that? Those were the last words he ever wrote. The understatement is just... it's haunting. By this point, he was bleeding from pretty much every opening in his body, but to him, it was still just a manageable symptom to be documented. Shortly after he wrote that, his condition took a nosedive. So what in the world was actually happening inside Karl Schmidt's body during all this? I mean, to understand his calm, final entries, we really have to look at the silent, brutal science of the venom itself. Okay, so the boomslang has what's called a potent hemotoxic venom. Now, unlike neurotoxins, which attack your nervous system, hemotoxins go to work on your blood and your circulatory system. It's this insidious kind of poison that, well, essentially makes you bleed to death from the inside out. This really breaks it down. The venom kicks off this total cascade failure. First, it creates thousands of tiny, useless little clots all through your bloodstream, which uses up all your body's natural clotting agents. And once those are gone, there's absolutely nothing left to stop bleeding anywhere. This is exactly why Schmidt's autopsies showed massive hemorrhaging in his lungs, kidneys, heart, and brain. Every single symptom he so calmly noted down was a sign of this complete systemic collapse.
Schmidt died, yes, but his final selfless act of documentation, it was not for nothing. It actually created a legacy that helps answer our initial question and, believe it or not, continues to save lives today.
So, let's get back to the big question. Why didn't he get help? Well, there are basically three main theories. First, just pure scientific curiosity. He apparently told a colleague he didn't want medical treatment to upset the symptoms. Second, it could have been pragmatic resignation. As an expert, he knew the only antivenom that worked was thousands of miles away in Africa. And finally, it might have just been a tragic miscalculation. He simply underestimated what a young snake's bite could do. The truth is, it was probably a mix of all three.
But regardless of his reasoning, the result was an incredible gift to science. Schmidt's diary gave the world the very first detailed, minute-by-minute account of what boomslang venom does to a human. It was horrifying for sure, but an absolutely invaluable roadmap for all the doctors and researchers who came after him.
And the impact of his notes? It's staggering. Thanks to the knowledge that was gained from his death diary, an effective antivenom was developed. So in the nearly 70 years since that day, how many fatal boomslang bites have been recorded? Just 7. His final tragic experiment has, without a doubt, saved countless lives.
So how do we remember a guy like Karl Schmidt? Is he a scientific hero who made the ultimate sacrifice for the sake of knowledge? Or is he a tragic victim of his own miscalculation and curiosity? His story doesn't really offer any easy answers, but it does force us to confront a really profound question. What is the true price of understanding our world?
If you were in Schmidt's position, would your curiosity have outweighed your fear? It's a haunting look at how far some are willing to go for the sake of data. Let's discuss the ethics and the bravery behind his final notes in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe.